really North Star because 10,000 people will stop asking questions. It grew from like one or two to about 10 or so in the first 6 months. The channel doesn't actually matter. It's about the people. You got to get the right people. Like referrals and word of mouth is the ultimate growth channel. How do you? Because we're trying to foster a no pitching, no selling rule. I didn't start this to become a founder because.
So today on Earning Ears, we have Axel Sukianto. Axel is a lawyer turned B2B SaaS marketing leader who has worked across Dropbox, Cisco, UpGuard, and now at TrueScope. He's also the founder of the Generate, the ANZ marketing community that he grew from one person to more than 1,500 people, largely by resisting the usual growth playbook. Axel, thank you so much for coming on an episode of Earning Ears.
Such kind words, Adam. Such kind words. I can't wait for our discussion.
I'm really curious about how you grew the community because to be honest with you, I'm growing a podcast network. We're at like 20 plus shows now or something like that. We do over 40,000 listens a month, plus a whole lot of other impressions across our other channels. But community is still like a bit of a black box to me. It's one thing to have an audience, and that's a whole other thing to foster a community where that audience is, really talking to each other and growing without you. So I'm really curious. Generator's now at 1,500 members, but can you take me back to so when my very first podcast was called Welcome to Day One. I really loved going back to tell that story of like, what did it look like on day one? How did you get from day one to this incredible thing that you're at right now? Can you take us back to like day one? Like who was in that first room with you? And like, how were you talking to the very small group of people about what you wanted to build?
Yeah, no, good question. So I guess I'm a little bit lucky that I didn't quite have a standing start in that sense. So back in 2022, I was part of a number of marketing communities online globally. So that's where a lot of them were popping up in the US. And I could see what people were doing. They were creating these spaces, and everyone, and as you pointed out, it's very different to be unidirectional versus bidirectional, or like having a whole conversation in a community where it's different to have a newsletter where you have one way versus like a community where you have everyone talking amongst each other. So I joined some of these international communities, and it was great. I was learning a lot of it, and a lot of it I took as learnings to implement to Generate. But to answer your specific question, I remember there's like, okay, I need to participate. I'm going to ask some questions that are relevant to my day job. My specific use case was I'm based in Sydney, and I needed a merch vendor in Brisbane to turn it around in 48 hours. So I asked the question. I was like, hey guys, does anyone know any Brisbane-based merch providers who can do this specific thing for me? And the people were kind, and they replied like, I've had that before. Here's my merch person based in Florida. Or like, hey, here's my merch person based in Amsterdam. And I went, great. I don't want to have to wait 12 hours to wait for a response. And maybe they have a network or a warehouse or whatever in Australia, but this is not meeting my need. So then I went, okay, this doesn't quite serve the need. But luckily for me, within that community, there were a number of Australians in there. And it's like, hey, I saw that question. This is some of the suggestions that I've used. And I went, this is great. How do I use more of this to my own selfish advantage? And that started the seed of like, maybe I should start something here.
So that was the catalyst to make you wanted something more custom to you, local, regional. But like, I don't know what my question is here, but I'm just like really curious about what does it take for somebody to actually go and say, oh, I'm going to start that. I'm going to build that. Like, what is the thing that kind of pushed you over the line? Like, were you always, I don't know. Yeah.
I read a Substack this weekend around why does everyone have to be a founder? Why is it like when you leave something, it's like, why do I have to build something? Why do I have to start something? And I think I resonate with that because starting Generate was never meant to be my foray into I want to start something. It genuinely came from a need that I went, well, I'm going to have more of these local specific questions around Australia, etc., that I don't want to have to ask the whole community that's irrelevant. I'm going to ask a small group of people within the community. I was like, wait, maybe I should start this. But I'll take us into one direction, Adam. This was not the way that I approached it had a number of mistakes and a number of failures through. So the group that I was in a Facebook group. Like if you remember Facebook groups, you maybe a number of your listeners are in their local Facebook group marketplace kind of
Yeah.
groups. It started there,
Yeah.
and I went, okay, well, there's a small subset of people here, less than five. It's like, oh, maybe I should start my own Facebook group. So I started my own Facebook group, but people didn't want to check two Facebook groups. I'm like, oh, maybe I should make it a Facebook chat. And like, oh, that also died. And I went, I'm in
Huh.
B2B, LinkedIn's the way. Maybe I'm going to start LinkedIn groups. Do you remember LinkedIn groups? Right? I started a LinkedIn group
Vaguely.
and no one picked it up. And I was like, oh, maybe I'll move into a LinkedIn group chat, use that. Synchronous didn't work either. And that, with all those failures, I went, okay, I'm getting a sense of what's working and what's not working. That's when I pulled the trigger into the current version of Generate, which currently lives on Slack. And it's like, and I know that specifically for SaaS, at least, there's a number of companies that use Slack for their work communications. And I went, well, I need to make this as frictionless as possible for people to want to interact and engage. So I use that. And then some mid 2022, I decided to start a Slack workspace for Generate, and that's where it started. But really,
Got it.
there's a whole lot of failures. But I didn't start this to become a founder because I actually had a need, selfishly for myself, to be better at work.
Yeah, I think that's how the best things are founded. Trying to solve something for yourself. And that's really interesting to hear. I had no idea about this early on. Like, what kind of timeline was that? Because it was founded in 2022, right?
Yeah.
Like, how long did it take you to kind of find that right channel?
Oh, a good number of months. I'd say maybe three plus
Yeah.
months. I don't know exactly. But my advice is to anyone thinking about this kind of stuff is the channel doesn't actually matter. It's about the people. You got to get the right people. People will follow you to a channel they don't use if they see the value, whether that's interacting with you or getting value from the things that you produce. The channel doesn't really matter. I have a few people asking me now, it's like, oh, is Slack the best way? Or there's all these other new age community platforms. Like I'm worried. It's like, okay, which one's the right one? And they end up with 3 to 6 months of thinking about what channel to use, right? And they go, dude, you just gotta start, man.
Yeah. So first of all, that's the bloody thumbnail right there. The channel doesn't matter. Second, I look at you online and I see everything you've accomplished, and I look at Generate now, and it's just so kind of refreshing to hear that, like, you didn't just kind of go boom, 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 success with like early on. Like you're still just human, like the rest of us, and you just kind of solve the problems as you go. And then, so to talk about the channel now, if the channel doesn't matter, how you help people, the people, the value you provide, that's the thing that, and people will follow you. Do you have a little bit of what, if we're not thinking about the channel, what do we need to be thinking on exactly really early on when we want to build a community?
Yeah, to me, it's about what you want to achieve from the community. I think like in the early days, and I think still a little bit to these days. I mentioned the selfish point. I want a community that I want to be a part of. I want to ask questions. I want to see what other people are doing, and that's really what is the main thread of Generate for me personally as Axel the marketer. And to that point, it's about finding, to me, people in the same vein, people who are curious, people who want to engage, and finding those people and fostering those relationships. Community at the heart of it is relationships, the same way that I think a sales relationship would be, but this is a different type of relationship. I mentioned the example of a newsletter. We do have a newsletter within Generate. We think of that as very much a unidirectional. This is us telling you of the things that we think are important and you think you might care about, but really there's no really avenue for a reply. Maybe some people reply, but there's no avenue to connect people amongst all the different newsletter subscribers, right? But in that vein, it's like, well, I want a place that I can learn from others. You just got to find similar people. And look, at the very start, it took forever to grow because finding these people was not easy. And I had a pretty small network to begin with. And I think we chatted a little bit about cold starts. It's really hard. Like whatever you start, you got to find the right people, and you got to nurture that through around finding the right people with that goal in mind. What are you trying to achieve? I'm trying to be better at myself at work, trying to be curious, and you find the same people who are also trying to be better and curious at their jobs.
Yeah, I really do want to talk about how we find the right people. That's definitely one of the things that I find most interesting about Generate, in that, like, you seem to be very focused on curating the right group of people together. And because I see like, there's a hard no on promotion and that kind of thing. But just before we kind of go down that rabbit hole, starting a Slack channel with a few people in it is a very different thing to what you are now running, which is a much bigger community. You've got the summit as well. What has changed in your mind through that journey of growing that community? Like, is it still like what best serves Axel? Like, what is the community you're trying to build now? What's the through line?
It is still the same thing at the heart of it. To when I first started it, it is a place that I first go. Oh, I have this question with work. I have this problem at work relating to marketing. And that's a place that I would go and I would get answers through it. But the different thing is the size. If I use say a posting on LinkedIn as an example, I speak to a few people even this year around. Oh, hey, I see what you're posting on LinkedIn. I'd like to do the same, but I have all these queries. I have these things that's stopping me, mostly around I don't want to put myself out there, right? Yeah. For a community, I think the size really, really matters. I was telling my team that there's going to be an inflection point that generates changes. To be in part of a community that you have 10 people, to a community of 1,500 people like we are now, to a community of hypothetically 10,000. I don't think there are 10,000 B2B marketers in Australia and New Zealand, but let's in that, the place totally changes. If you are someone trying to share questions, it changes the dynamics. In a group of 10, you're happy to go, hey, I know where everyone works. No one's a competitor. I'm going to ask this question around, hey, I have this thing that my competitor is doing. Should I consider following it, doing it? And you feel in a safe space. At 1,500, you kind of go, well, maybe they're in there. If I share my trade secrets or ask these questions, maybe they'll find out and I'll be at a disadvantage. At 10,000, there's no chance. You might as well at that point, you ask on LinkedIn and you go like, okay, hey guys, this is what I'm trying to do. So I think the size really matters. And I think that curation point around member admission for us is really, really important because it will change. Like whether you believe it or not, what you post on a 5-person WhatsApp group chat, for example, to a 15-person Slack channel is very different. And I think that where like, hey, this will change at some point, and just keep nurturing and being true to ourselves as we go through this slow growth, much for how we go think about it. Because we have people asking us, hey, we can help you grow to like massive amounts. And I'm like, that's not really my North Star, because 10,000 people will stop asking questions. And the place will change. And it will naturally change. But how do we make that in a concerted effort, in a thoughtful way?
Yeah, and how do you? Yeah, well, I got so many follow-ups there. But like, when did the Generate Summit like enter the roadmap? Was it part of like how do we continue to provide value with the community getting bigger and bigger and bigger?
I think about I think about the term overnight success, like Will Richards and all this stuff that he's doing is very much people think of you as an overnight success. And you go like, oh, it just happened. You had this blueprint grand plan. No chance. Nope. That's not for me in my experience for anything that I do. That's a lot of graft and hard work, like the failures that I mentioned in terms of channels. But the conference aspect of it was very much a conversation over one of our meetups. We run quarterly meetups for our members based in Sydney, Melbourne, and Brisbane. And someone came up like, hey, what do you think about running a conference and a place for people to actually meet? Because it's very different to run an online community where people feel open to ask questions, but you can't really foster relationships, so to speak, over online. It's much harder. It's much harder. And that suggestion came up. We entertained that conversation for a good number of weeks, and then it was like, yeah, why don't we give this a go? I am by heart risk averse person, and I went, I don't know how to do this. I've never done this before, but luckily a few people who have that experience said that we'll give this a go. We'll partner up with you, and we did that for the first time in 2024, and was a great success. If I think of the lens of does this support the community, the answer is yes, because it fosters that community vibe. And if we look at some of our stats, our engagement metrics, which is a lot of our North Star, totally increases after our big conference, because you and I, we've met now, and like we started DM chat, we contribute more in the community. Oh, someone that I met at the coffee line asked a question. I know who that person is. Let me answer that question because I know how to answer it, versus I don't know this person, I can answer it. It helps that aspect, so it all sort of helps each other. And now we're on to our third edition.
That's awesome. Yeah, I really love that. I don't know if I should admit this like on a podcast like you just did, but like I very much don't have a roadmap for day one. I was like figure out when we get to the end of one road and then look for the next road. That's kind of how we've been approaching it. I'd love to be more planned, but
But
it's hard.
there's nothing wrong with that either. Especially like we're not a sizable company that you're publicly listed and you need to present to the board or like a 5-year plan. And also things change. Adam, we talked in the green room before this around AI, and like who knows where that's taking us, and
Yeah,
that's something
yeah,
that we should be cognizant of and continue to be agile.
yeah, yeah. I agree. Okay, how so? This is the really kind of big one to growing. I think a really engaged and valuable community, getting the right people in the room, like. And it seems to me that you've said it yourself, like there's people trying to help you grow, but you really want to fight that growth a little bit in a way to like make sure that you are growing the right community instead of a big community. How are you thinking about that, and what's been working for you to kind of keep finding the right people?
Yeah. Talent concentration, I think the same way that people would hire for teams is something that's quite high on how we think about growth. It's not about it's not like building an email list where like, oh, hey, an extra 10,000 here, an extra 10,000 there will be great. It's very much about talent.
Hey there. Since you're listening to this, you are probably curious about how the best audiences get built. You probably already are running a show or thinking about it. Axel grew a 1,500 person community by just starting and showing up. A podcast is probably the most effective way for you to grow an audience in today's day and age. Authority, your ICP, and a content waterfall that will just make it hard for your content not to find your audience. At Day One and the agency behind the podcast network, W2D1 Media, we handle production, editing, clips, and distribution. You just show up and talk. We do the rest. Scan the QR code to book a call or click the link in the description. Back to the episode.
We have the right people in the room with the right level of experience and talent who are willing to engage in conversations. That's really what we want. We want to grow from 1,500 to the 1,600 number with senior mid-level B2B marketers to know what they're doing, who are involved in their craft so much that they are curious and inquisitive about the new tools, the new processes, how others are doing it. That's what we want, and that's what we're looking to really grow. And having these programs such as the quarterly meetup that I mentioned or even the conference really helps us provide that platform and finding the right set of people, because the North Star that we have is very much engagement metrics. Are people engaged, whether it's the Slack community or whether they come to our meetups, right? Well, if I buy a list of 10,000, that's not going to help me with that aspect of it. It'll help my top line number, but really it's about the engagement of it that we're looking for, because to the point that I made around a 10,000 person community feels different. Like, well, if we grow this thoughtfully, then people will continue, and they see the growth, they grow with it, and then they continue asking questions, they continue answering other community members' questions. That's how we ultimately grow, is my take around talent concentration.
That's great. What is from that 1,500 number to 1,600 number? Say like the next 100 people, where will they most likely come from?
So we talked about like the day one stuff, Adam, on the early days. The early days, like outbound was the way to go. And I remember the story that I tell people for the first 6 months. I think we grew from like one or two to about 10 or so in the first 6 months, right? And that was mostly
Wow.
people that I knew, right? But that's a 1,000% growth.
Yeah.
There's mostly people that I knew, but to then grow, and I went, okay, well, how can I get this bigger? And I remember outbounding people. It's like, oh, I see them post on LinkedIn, so I outbound them, and a lot of them goes unreplied, because they're like, who is this person with a Slack community? They said there's like 10 other people. I don't know who you are, and it was a slog at the start. But these days it's very much around word of mouth. Like we don't run any advertising for the community. It's very, hey, people move to a new job and they invite their bosses or their teams, or they go to a different marketing event that we don't host, and they're like, oh, hey, have you heard about Generate? And that's the one that we want to actually around, because they know what the community is about. They are invested in keeping it at a high talent concentration and high talent density. How do we get them to want to invite them? So really word of mouth, and this is the same for a lot of other businesses trying to grow, where we like referrals and word of mouth is the ultimate growth channel. How do you scale? super hard, super hard. But
Yeah.
because we're not aiming for the hyper growth in terms of member numbers, it actually suits us in that way.
Well, you just said like how do we make it so that our members do want to invite other people to the community? Like, how do you do that? I think we're just going to kind of go back here. It's just about, is it just, tell me if I'm wrong, it's just about kind of fostering that very dense talent pool of people that are like in the same, solving the same problems that the other guys are solving.
That's one half of it. I think
Mm.
having the right audience, like you could in the same way that you grow a business, having the right ICP and knowing who they are helps, but you need to provide them value. And I think value is the other half of this coin, where we can have 1,500 B2B marketers, but how do we provide value? And we think of it in terms of the programs that we run with them. So the conference is one program. I mentioned the quarterly meetup is another program that we do to get people together. We have
Yeah.
obviously the Slack community itself is a program where we have seed questions, and people asking questions and answering them, fostering this thing of a community. We have specific channels within the community to foster that. We have a wins channel, which is personally my favorite, where
Hmm.
Australia is well known for its tall poppy syndrome, and the wins channel is just a smaller place for you to go like, hey, one of our members like got Carl Stefanovic as one of their like segments for one of their campaigns, and he
Yep.
shared it there, like in a world where maybe if you don't have any friends working in the same marketing space as you say that over a barbecue, and you're like, great, sure, what's next, right? But you
Yep.
have this place, and it's fostering this community feel and good vibes around this wins channel. But another one that I would really do is
I
like
love that.
we have a one-on-one program where about 100 marketers opt in, and we use a piece of software that connects you to one of the 100, and it tells you, hey, in the next month have a coffee or have a Zoom chat with this super person that you have no idea or random. But it fosters this community of people meeting each other, and there are instances where people have found jobs through like some of our programs. But it's
That's
just
cool.
creating these things to provide value for them on top of the talent density point.
That's awesome. And then just hearing about all of those programs, actually, I would love to ask, like, what's another one of those wins? Like, what are some of the biggest wins that you've seen come through that channel?
Yeah, the biggest one is like people sharing campaigns that outside of marketing they wouldn't care about. Like people running webinars and getting 100 people to attend a webinar. Like that number doesn't sound like a lot on
That
LinkedIn.
sounds
LinkedIn's
great.
full of On LinkedIn, it's like, oh yeah, I got 10,000 people to do this thing. It's like, well, but really, like we're in a market 10% the size of the US as a
Mm.
start. B2B is
Yeah.
notoriously small because people it's unlike B2C or CPG where you can run big billboards, right? It's like
Yeah.
small. Hey, you run a 100-person webinar, it was really successful, it generates X amount of pipeline, and
Yeah.
that's what we want to hear. And then
Yeah.
it creates this sort of back and forth around, oh, you did this on this platform, or you ran this campaign with this set of people. How did you get the speakers to agree? What's the sort of hook that you used? How did you get sales to agree to want this campaign? Those are sort of discussions that come out of these wins as well, that really I think is where the value is, not just the win itself,
Yeah.
but the how we get there.
That sounds amazing. I'm getting chills just like, yeah, these conversations. These are the questions that I think about all the time. And just briefly, like the exact same problem you just mentioned, a tenth of the size of the US market. Like that is a very real thing that affects, us at Day One trying to grow a podcast network, which is predominantly a B2B podcast network
Mm-hmm.
in Australia, in a tiny market as well. It's tough. What's it like? Just again, out of curiosity, on the admin side for you, like, you mentioned all these programs you're running, all these different things. What's it like running a 1,500 person member community and also holding down a day job as well?
Yeah, no, that's all the question. So I don't run this by myself anymore. Like it used to be by myself in the very early days where
Yeah.
I would answer every question and everything. I'm lucky to have a small team, call them the core team, that we own different programs, and we very much run an egalitarian sort of structure where
Yeah.
different people own different programs and they own that piece. For example, the meetups is owned by someone, or I spoke to you about that one-on-one program is owned by someone. We have that as our core team, but then we have a number of volunteer put your hand up ambassadors to be like, hey,
Mm.
you want you can help us do more. We have that sort of as well. So we involve them a little bit more in some of the planning and some of the strategy as well around, hey, how should we craft this? And they help us with the execution, but they get a title of being an elevated member of the community, and
Yep.
they get early access to some of the things that we're cooking and provide us feedback. So it's very much true to that community feel around, hey, we like to hear from the community. If you want to be involved, you're welcome to. But we created a bit of a structure around, these are the North Star around no questions go unanswered and making sure that we provide value and the talent density point. But we have a number of people within that core team function as well as our ambassadors to help us, because I will not be able to do this by myself. Put plain and simply.
I want to switch gears a little bit. We might come back to this kind of where you're at right now and like the challenges of that. But I'm thinking about the people listening to this show right now who are thinking about starting a community. I want to ask a couple of questions that might help them in that kind of really early stage. But like before I ask that, what come over you to want to switch from corporate lawyer to jump into B2B SaaS marketing?
So I went to law school, worked as a corporate lawyer for 3 years at one of the top tier firms in Sydney. And I remember a specific point during my short legal career that I went, is this the thing that I want to do? And that was, I was in a board meeting. I was working through an IPO, one of the known companies in the space. And I was at a board meeting, and it was this typical long board table where the CEO and the execs were on one side of it, and then the advisors were on the other side of it. So we were sitting, the lawyers, the investment bankers, and the accountants. And I obviously sat with my partner at the time. Partner is like the partner of a law firm, not my partner. But the CEO would ask, okay, these are the things, this is the thing we plan to do next up. Do we have any issues? And my boss put up their hand and like, okay, well, we see all these risks around it. Don't do this. And the CEO went, thank you. That's why we pay you. But we're going to go ahead and do it and take on that risk. At that point, I went, why am I here? I don't want to be on this side of the board table. I want to be on that side of the board table where I decide, hey, on an assessment of risk, the upside is too hard to ignore. Let's do it and take it on and then see what happens. I want to be on that side of the board table. And I think that triggered me to think around what do I want to continue providing advice that people may or may not listen to, or do I mean the other side of the board table where I look at a P&L and a balance sheet and go like, okay, well, this is what we want to achieve. These are the cool things that we could do, albeit some risks. Let's do it. And I had a bit of a soul searching moment for I think more than 6 months, and I went, okay, what do I want to do now? And I remember looking on Seek. It's like, okay, I don't want to do the job anymore. Going on Seek, I was like, what do I search for? Because I was trained as a lawyer. I went to law school other than law, and I didn't know what to do. And luckily for me, one of my good friends just made that jump out of law into tech, specifically marketing. And she's like, do you want to give it a go? I'm like, yeah, I'll give it a go. Like, well, and then we started working.
Can't be that hard.
Can't be that hard. And yeah, she made one of my great friends, and we both moved into marketing together, and it was great.
Yeah, that's cool. That's a cool story. And so you jumped into marketing, then a little bit later you started to generate community. One person. What, like, for the people out there that are looking to start a community in a very early stage, 1 to 10, you already mentioned like outbound is very like basically your only option at that point, or am I wrong? Like how do you go about, if it is outbound, how do you craft that message? How did you do it? If there's other options, what are they?
The question that I would ask is, why do you want to start a community? And that's very much around first principles. What's your goal here? What are you trying to do? And if you want to do it with a clear purpose, great, good on you. Then my next question would be, are there existing communities that you can piggyback off instead? Whether if you're starting to start a community for your business or for your company, maybe there are existing communities out there, or if you're wanting to start one, are there existing ones that you can partner up with? Like there may be someone starting it from day zero 3 months ago and roughing it. Maybe you can join forces and be a better team, because it is so hard. And these days I'm sure this is a little bit the same with podcasts. There's so many podcasts out there, right? Community feels like it's getting a new wave. Like there's going to be a lot of communities out there. Whether what your definition of community could be, it was a Facebook group or like just like a group chat with a bunch of people. There's a lot out there, and ultimately Same with podcasts. People only have 24 hours in a day to listen in. People only have 24 hours to engage in a community. Do
Yeah.
you want them to have to find your community as the top one and compete with other communities? Or are there other ones that you can piggyback off, whether you help them, sponsor them, be engaged in? Because that is how I think about it. If ultimately you decide that you want to start your own community, then yes, I think your networks and outbound are the two first things that I would lean into. Like, use your network really, really well. And if you don't have it, like me at the very start, then you got to try the outbound and graft it really hard. But the thing is, you need to be consistent. You need to want to continue to be part of it. At the very start of a community, I answered all the questions. I'm pretty sure I asked like 80% of the questions, right? But
Yeah.
you gotta do it, because community is to me all about engagement. Some people say like, hey, I started a newsletter and community, and I ask them, what's the community aspect of it? Yeah, the newsletter. It's like, well, I don't have
Yeah.
a newsletter as a community, in my strict definition. If it
No, I
is
agree.
yours, so be it. But to me, that's unidirectional, very different to
That,
community.
yeah, and just I think this might, one of the last questions, like that is tough very early on. Like I remember, I think a decade ago I tried to start something again, like a forum, and you always hear those stories about what it's like in the early days, where you are asking all the questions. I've heard a story of, and like and pretending to be the
It's like
different people in the
Reddit,
community.
with 10 Reddit accounts.
Yeah, yeah, but it is, as the founder of that community, it is really tough, because it sounds like you are just shouting into a void, and like this will never get better. There will never be other engagement. Like, how do you get through that stage? Because there's no way around it. That early stage is just really tough and really slow. You
It's super
just got to
hard.
have a good why.
Yeah, understand why you're doing it. I think it really helps with me because the community would help my job. So it's this growth loop, I guess, if you want to call it that, where it's self-serving my own personal needs to grow my career. That helps. But
Yeah,
another way to think about it, this is the path that you've chosen. Find people, similar people who are trying to grow with you, whether that's the same thing or a slightly different thing or something completely wildly different, and you can share these wins and failures together. Create your own community. Like, I chat with Georgie Healy, and Georgie's trying to grow her, I'm gonna call it, media empire. She's gonna grow her
yeah,
media empire. But we share some of the things around growth, and it's some things are painful, but it's great to have someone to go, hey, I have this win. No one else will understand, but I know that she will understand, and you can continue cheering each other on, even though growing the actual thing is really hard. So find your own. I know it's kind of meta, but finding your own people, tribe, community to
yep,
grow that thing is really helpful and keeps you sane.
yeah. What's Oh, we're so glad you mentioned Georgie. She's killing it with podcasting right now. A lot of our other hosts should be learning a lot from what she's doing. What's next for Generate?
To, to piggyback off your answer, I don't have a blueprint, and I don't know if that's a good or bad thing. But one of the things is, like, we're trying to grow thoughtfully. I mentioned some of those programs that we're doing. We're consistently sunsetting and introducing new programs as we see fit. Some of the things, for example, the same with Slack channels. If you're working in Slack, like, people create Slack channels and it dies, you sunset it
Yep.
and you create something new. Same with our programs. We see something and we're like, oh, that's not quite working, or it's taking too much effort compared to the value it's delivering us and the community. So let's put that back on the drawing board. Let's do something else. So we're thinking about some new programs over the next 12 months. But for now, we have Generate Summit coming up very, very soon. And we're going to continually to think about how we make that better every year. Maybe not necessarily bigger, but how do we make that better? Because we are unique that we are selling to marketers in that sense. And it's really hard because marketers are very opinionated on the thing that
Yeah,
they're working on. An example
yeah.
I have is trying to run a conference to a bunch of event marketers. You wouldn't believe the number of questions we ask. Like, hey, the air conditioning is too cold, the food isn't great, the coffee is weak, and you go, man, no other audience would care about this. They're just happy for
Yeah,
their free coffee. So
that's
how do we
great.
make that happen?
Yeah, cool. That's that's great. That would be so tough. Marketing to marketers, you'd be under critique, like under a microscope, like how you could have done it better.
All the time.
So, okay, great. This has been a great conversation. I've really enjoyed it. I've really learned a lot as well. If there are, So just remind me, who is the perfect ICP for Generate?
We, as Generate, as a community, it's perfect for in-house B2B marketers in Australia and New Zealand. That's the persona we want, because there's 1,500 of people like you in the community. It is not for agencies. It is not for SDRs of MarTech companies, because we try to foster a no pitching, no selling rule. Because what I find, based on my personal experience of being on other communities, is that once you get sold consistently, that's a community that I stay away from, and that's something that we definitely don't want the experience to be.
Yeah. So for if someone is listening right now that fits that perfectly and understands that, it's not for selling, it's not for pitching, it's for real conversations. Like, how do they, like, is there like some kind of secret door knock they have to do to kind of get in, or be?
It used to be a secret door knock, but we have grown up a little bit. We have a website. It's generate.community. There's a form in there, and you can fill in, and we'll assess it. The person assessing it is me, so I go through all of it. So that way, that's how we keep the talent density relatively high.
Cool. We'll put that in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on an episode of Earning Years, Axel. It's been so good to talk to you.
Thanks so much, Adam. Appreciate it.